Hello again, everybody. So today we have our second video about the Timurids, and we're going to talk about their legacy, impact, and how they eventually came to an end. So one of the things that was really big in the Timurid Empire was scholarship. Timur himself seems to have been very educated, and from what our records tell us, he was multilingual. That he spoke Turkish, Mongolian, and Persian, and he was really big on supporting scholarship and bringing schools and bringing madrasas all over his empire. And the empire itself and their scholars were particularly noted for their skill in astronomy, and many of their observations would be used by scientists as far away as Europe, all the way into the 1700s to actually further advance our understanding of the subject. The other big things that we had was city building, and his goal here were to build the great cities of Asia as well as connect those cities through trade. And as I mentioned in the previous video, he's looking to bring in architects, engineers, and the labor and skilled labor to do all this. Probably the two most famous cities were Herat with its grand library, and of course, Samarkand as well. Samarkand, which I'll show you some in a minute. You have him, the building of the Bibi Kayan Mosque, which was actually built for him by one of his wives, and lots of mosques and kanakas, which are convents and things like that, as well as libraries and schools. That was the norm. So we see this is actually a picture outside the library in Herat. And on the right, you see one of the pages of the texts that were often copied or developed there. And here we have Samarkand. Again, absolutely beautiful. It's in Uzbekistan. You can go there today. We look at the wonderful turquoise colors. You have the columns and the pointed arches and the domes, and just absolutely beautiful when you look at it. When we get up close, Samarkand was definitely built to defend against a siege. As you can see, this massive city walls. And then this is the Bibi Mosque, of course, just absolutely famous with all the blues and the tile work and the mosaics, as well as the brickwork that you see here as well. Again, just beautiful, and really considered to be kind of, in many cases, the height of architecture in the golden age of Islam. And Islam was really, really important, okay? It was a focus on really everything for him. The use of the Quran to govern as well as to spread the faith. As I mentioned before, here you see the outside of the Bibi Khanim Mosque. And I talked about the building of mosques and kanakas all over the place. As a result, we see this region still today is very deeply Muslim. And a lot of it, you could indeed say, was because of Tamerlane. And it's an interesting, thing, because we see that he sees himself as the emissary of God and he wants to spread the religion. The problem was he also felt and saw himself as the scourge of God. So if you didn't want to, get in with this whole spreading of the religion thing, then, that wasn't going to work out super well for you. An example of that would be a quote that he referred to himself. So there were some Persian and Mongol nobles that were struggling with tribute and whatnot. And he was just reminding them of who he was. And he says, "I am the scourge of God, appointed to chastise you, since no one knows the remedy for your iniquity except me. You are wicked, but I am more wicked than you, so be silent." So it's just like, I want to spread the religion, but I'm just going to do it with the sword. And it was the juxtaposition is interesting. Again, more pictures of the Bibi Mosque, just to give you an idea of the size and scope of it. Again, as we keep going, art and architecture was really big, and as much of a destructive force as he was, which he was, even after his death, which the rulers didn't really do the conquering and killing everybody thing as much anymore. They focused a lot on architecture. So when you look at the Timurids, what are the things that we see here? The turquoise and blue tiles forming like really intricate linear and geometric patterns, lots and lots of domes. They did lots of painting. Miniature painting was also really big, and other things like bookmaking, leatherworking, calligraphy, as well as sculptures in wood and jade. On the left, you see just a single of the classic blue and turquoise tile, and that's really the hallmark of the art and architecture of this period. Probably the most famous guy was Kamal Uddin Bahas, who was a painter, and you can see and miniature painting. So the paintings themselves would be small, which you need to understand takes a lot of skill to do it properly. And he, as you see there on the right, is a bust of him in Uzbekistan today because he's really seen as kind of the preeminent artist of the era. Now, eventually, things do come to an end. Now, the Mongol Turkic tradition had him dividing up his empire to be governed by his sons. In the end, that really didn't work. You had fighting and revolutions in the West that would cause some issues. So eventually, his youngest son, Shah Rukh, took it over and then kind of governed as a independent monarch for a long, long time. But eventually, things are going to fall apart. You do have infighting. Again, I mentioned Western revolutions because you will get both the rise of the stronger area of the Ottomans and the second wave, particularly under Suleiman. You will also get the rise of the Safavids in the modern day Persian Empire, which will push them out as well. Okay. And they'll lose the area of Central Asia, if you look at the mouse up here, to the actual Uzbeks, which, of course, the country takes the name from them today. However, the Mughals are the successors of the Timurids because Babur, who is the founder of the Mughal dynasty in India. So that's a picture of Babur. So let me jump back here. So this will become the Mughal Empire. Uzbekistan's right up in here, and he himself was an Uzbeki, and he was able to hold on to, say, Kabul, which is in modern day Afghanistan, and eventually spread into Pakistan and India. And Babur is the great great grandson of Tamerlane. And the way that I kind of like to look at the Mughals are, they're really kind of the offshoot of, say, like the Byzantines were of the Romans. So the Byzantines were really the Romans. They just eventually go by this different name, but they were the Romans. And much of the Mughals, they were these Uzbek Turks, Mongols. They were the successors of the Timurids, and they just kind of go by a different name because they're in a different geographical area. And so even though it was a relatively short-lived dynasty, still had a lot of influence and legacy today, and hopefully you learned a little something new about it. Thanks for coming by, guys. See you later.